Good evening, everybody. Our team, Marie.
Aye. I'll just I'll give one more minute here before we get started.
Hello.
Okay, if there's no objections, we'll get started. See if we've really filled in, got a lot of people online now. I'll kick it off. My name's Marie Rainwater. I do facilitation. I'm a process person. I'm here to support a productive, hopefully a tight, organized meeting where we get a lot of stuff done. Full disclosure, I've been working with Artie and Norm just to make sure we have good estimates on timing and we're clear with the agenda and whatnot, and a good tight presentation. So I'm going to go over a few housekeeping things here. We also have Julie Chu from the department, who is our tech support for today. So I ask you all to mind your mutes. If you're not able to, Julie's going to kind of check and make sure everybody stays muted unless you're prompted to talk. Keep stuff on mute because it will really cut down on background noise. We are recording this and it will be available. So just to be full disclosure, this is being recorded. And now I'll quickly go over the meeting agenda. The main purpose of tonight's meeting is to give an update on the feasibility study for the Woodacre wastewater project. And the subcomponents of that will check in on process and calendar. There was some feedback to RT and team that there was some confusion with some of the terminology that was used in the questionnaire that was sent out to 270 households in the Woodacre area. So throughout Norm's presentation, there's going to be some clarification and further explanation of some of the terminology that was used. Just touching base on the questionnaire, the scope and purpose, and an overall update on the study and where Norm's progressed to right now and the next steps and whatnot. Then there was an agreement that the two groups that have been talking with Artie et al. For a while now, who've been involved, the San-Geronimo Valley Planning Group and the Woodacre Flats Wastewater Group, both submitted comments ahead of time, like their top 4 questions, so that it would give some lead time for Artie and Norm to be prepared to integrate hopefully some of those answers into the presentation. So we're projecting that taking about 15 minutes to follow up on specific answers that may not have been addressed in the presentation. And then there will be 30 minutes for open Q&A. The way we're going to try and manage that, because we do have a lot of, I'm scrolling down, we are getting a big crowd, and I assume some folks will continue to join, that will prompt everybody for a minute. And Julie will do that. She'll have a little timer. So she'll have a timer going for you to ask your questions just so we can manage our time. That is not the only opportunity to ask questions, because I want to acknowledge that, trying to squeeze everything into one public meeting is often not possible if you have a very interested and community with a lot of questions. So there's a few other options. If you see it on your bar down there, there's a Q&A. You can put questions in there, written questions. And if we don't get to you tonight in line with our limited time, Artie with Norm will take those questions and we'll write an email, send it out to the group with answers. Also, Artie is very open to people contacting her. Contact information is on the website. So there's multiple opportunities. Don't feel constrained by this, but we have to work within this format. So you'll get a minute little, timer thing. And so I respectfully ask you to keep within that minute or really close to it. And then we'll see if it's a comment, it'll be noted. If it's a question, we'll see if there's a response from any of the representatives here. Are there any questions just on process and how we're going to do the meeting process tonight? Okay, great. I'll kind of, in case people join late, I'll go over that again when we get to the Q&A section. Okay, then I'm going to turn it over to Artie, who's going to kick us off with some high-level context stuff before we go to Norm. Artie.
Thank you, Marie. So to all of you, my name is, who may not know me, welcome to our meeting. This is not our first meeting, but series of the meeting that we have been doing with the community members. I want to introduce myself here. My name is Aarti Kundu. I am the project manager in Environmental Health Services, and I am working here with my supervisor, Greg Pure. He's also with us in this meeting today, and also want to acknowledge Fernando from Board of Supervisors meeting. And with that being said, and not taking a lot of time, I would like to start and show you the timeline. And this is the timeline for all the steps that are being involved in this project. So it will help us in guiding us through the project steps. So here, if you can see, we, as shown in this timeline, we are currently in the step 1, which is the feasibility study. And we are doing this feasibility study to analyze and compare the various alternatives to identify the best wastewater management plan for the community. In step 2, which involves the community outreach and the engagement, which will help us in picking up after the engagement and the outreach. I believe the community can select the best preferred alternative, either through a questionnaire or either through the survey. And once this alternative is selected, we can proceed to our step 3, where we must secure funding through the grants or the low interest loan programs, which is actually a very critical step in this project. And moving on from step 3 is step 4, which involves forming an assessment district with the help of the Board of Supervisors. While step 5 requires us to submit a request to the Regional Water Board for a small domestic wastewater discharge permit for the design and the operation of on-site wastewater treatment system, called as OWTS, along with an updated detailed system design. Step 6, which is an essential part of the project timeline, which involves acquiring land for the wastewater treatment facilities in Leachfield, along with recording easements. After completing these recordings, we move on to the final detailed engineer's report. Board of Supervisors intend to form the assessment district, Board of Supervisors assessment hearing, and the ballots that are due before the assessments can be recorded. And with that, once the bidding and the contractor selection has been done in step 8, we move on to our final step in this timeline, where we can start our construction. And we strongly believe that this project will yield a numerous benefit for the community, and basically improving the overall quality of life for its residents. And our priority here is to collaborate closely with the community members and to ensure that our project aligns seamlessly with their needs and priorities. And with that being said, thank you for your time and attention. And we welcome your questions and feedback at the end of this presentation with your question and answers round. And
now we're going to switch to Norm. So Artie's the command control there. So she's switching presentations. Okay, great.
Norm.
Okay, good evening, everyone. Norm Hatchie. I'm principal and managing engineer with Cuesta Engineering. We're located over in Point Richmond. Been working in and with Marin County for many years on different projects and wastewater systems in Marin and other areas in the Bay Area. Pleased to be here this evening to tell you about the progress we've been making with the feasibility study and answer questions. And hopefully we can get through this material and answer things that are on your mind and tell you, I think, some good progress that's been made. I thought a good place to start would be a little chronology. And these are just some of the highlights, not everything that's been going on over the years, but the efforts in the Woodacre area probably go back about 20 years or so. Back in 2004-05 and 2007, the Marin County implemented a program they called Septic Matters Program, offered confidential septic inspections throughout the county to homeowners. The majority, in fact, close to half of those asking for that service came from Woodacre residences. And of those, the work that was done and inspections in Woodacre, the findings were about 2/3 of the systems looked at were marginal to unacceptable. About the same time, the Tomales Bay Watershed Council, a nonprofit organization, conducts water quality sampling and other studies around the Tomales Bay drainage area, did a study in the Woodacre area and did find contamination, nitrates, bacteria, ammonia, surfactants, which are detergents in the streams. In 2007, the Woodacre Flats Wastewater Group formed. This was an informal group of local residents looking for septic solutions in the community. In 2010, the county, with outside funding from, I believe it was the EPA, sponsored the Woodacre Flats Wastewater Feasibility Study that looked at the core area of the Woodacre Flats, about 150 parcels. That led to different alternatives, and the one that was of most interest was a recycling project at the golf course. This was funded by state water board water recycling grant monies. That ended up with a study report in 2017, but after the golf course was closed, there was no further progress with that. Last year, the county authorized the current wastewater feasibility study, which looked back at or it was aimed at looking at an expanded local system using one of the other alternatives that was identified in the 2010 Woodacre Flats study, and that's the project that we're working on and are going to talk about tonight. Next. This is a few slides just to look at some of the conditions that the Woodacre Flats area has to deal with. This was from this last year. Next slide. High groundwater conditions, very clay soils. The railroad avenue, which is an old railroad grade, does cause a obstruction of water movement through the area, and the flat terrain leads to some pretty serious groundwater conditions, which are not conducive to septic system operation in winter conditions. Next slide. So this slide shows a preliminary outline of the service area boundary. So this is not set in concrete, but this is an area that we have to delineate at the start of our study, so we can quantify numbers of parcels, lengths of pipeline, and other factors for the study that we're conducting. Those in blue in this are properties that have septic system records on file. We searched all the county records, and on the left-hand side you see a listing, an inventory of the findings from that review of those files. About 4%, 12 systems have what would be considered a class 1 septic system that's permitted under the current code for new construction since 1984. About 20% have repair systems since 1984. Class 3 is the designation for systems that were permitted prior to 1984 under a former county septic system code, and about 62% of the parcels have no records on file with the county. It doesn't mean that they don't have a permit record somewhere, but it's not in the county file. There are also about 23 vacant parcels within this diagrammed service area. The project is not studying alternatives to serve vacant parcels, just developed parcels. Next. So this is an overview slide. We'll come back to this again, but this is our way of diagramming the different alternatives, or the lay of the land and the areas that are part of the study. You can see here also the red outline of the service area. The blue lines in the center are potential pipeline locations for collection sewers, lift stations on the left-hand side at the bottom of Redwood Drive and at the corner of Railroad and San Geronimo Valley Drive, potential irrigation with recycled water in neighboring properties. The location for at the top, you can see the potential water recycling and treatment site is on the Dixon Ranch, and the green area up in the upper middle is the hillside or wooded property owned by the Dixon Ranch family, calling it Dixon Ridge in this, and that's the area that was identified in 2010, and we followed up with more detailed work for community leach field. Next slide. Just briefly, this, you would have seen this in the questionnaire survey that went out, but this is the listing of the alternatives that we're examining in the study. No project, which is basically the status quo. Alternative 2 is an upgrade and management program. Alternative 3 is primary septic tank to a community leach field. Alternative 4, secondary treatment, community leach field. Alternative 5 adds disinfection so that there could be seasonal irrigation. Alternative 6, tertiary recycled water treatment with more extensive recycling uses. We'll go into these as I go through. This is just an overview. On the right-hand side, you see a listing of the approximate number of connections that could be served by each of these alternatives. The primary leach field with the least capacity, and then the additional capacity as treatment is added. Next slide, please. So looking at, I won't spend any time on status quo. Everyone kind of knows the status quo, but that's a baseline always looked at in a study like this. But alternative 2 would look at forming an on-site management district, something along the lines of what is in operation in Stinson Beach and has been for 30, probably 40 plus years. So it involves forming an entity, and this would likely be under the oversight of the County Board of Supervisors, called an on-site management district or zone. It would allow for then establishing local standards to streamline the design, approval, and implementation of septic system upgrades. A systematic, over some period of time, not defined here, but evaluation and then upgrade of existing septic systems. There would also be an ongoing water quality sampling program, surface and groundwaters, to track the current impacts and the improvements over time. Possible with the formation of a district that there could be some financial assistance for upgrades, but there's nothing guaranteed. And then the opportunity to consider a wide range of technologies for dealing with high groundwater and soil percolation constraints in Woodacre, which are really quite severe in some areas. Next slide. Okay, so just briefly, the elements. I talk now about the community wastewater options, and these are the elements that go into a community wastewater system that will part of each of the alternatives. There's the collection system, and we're talking for the Woodacre area about an effluent sewer system, and we'll go into detail later about what that is and what it looks like. treatment, there's different levels: primary, basic septic tanks, secondary, and tertiary, just more sophisticated treatment from primary through tertiary. Disposal, we're looking at a community leach field as the only wastewater disposal option. There's no surface discharge. And the last item is recycling, to the extent that that is built into any of the alternatives, where the water can be treated to a level that it could be used for irrigation, dust control. At a tertiary level, there are much more extensive uses, including toilet flushing and so forth. But those are the elements of a community wastewater system. Okay, next slide. So the effluent sewer system. So the what this consists of, and I've also got a diagram to follow, it's a network of piping. So it's small diameter, 4-inch diameter piping that can be installed by what we call horizontal directional drilling rather than trenching. So it's a trenchless type of installation process, where you dig a pit at one end and you have your drill device. You have it pull a pit at the other end. You drill from one end to the other under parallel to the ground surface, but down at the depth of your pipe. And then you pull the pipe through. It's a fast process. It avoids disturbance of the streets and is quite well suited for installing effluent sewers. But in the sewer system, you have the effluent sewer only carries the effluent, the liquid portion of the septic tank effluent from a house septic tank. Each house would have a septic tank and with a gravity connection, or possibly a pump connection. We've estimated about 80% would be gravity connections in Woodacre because of the lay of the land. And then the sewer would just take, as I said, the liquid portion, and the solids be retained in the tank. The homeowner would be responsible for the pump out of the tank, just as they are now. Advantages: smaller pipes, no manholes like you would have in a normal municipal sewer system. It avoids groundwater infiltration. This is probably the biggest issue in Woodacre, because the pipes are fused together pipes. They don't have connections that can come apart, and they don't have manholes. And there's less maintenance and disturbance. Next slide, please. This is what to get a kind of a visual of an effluent sewer system. And I've shown on the left-hand side, if you look in the white boxes with the blue lettering, STEG at the top, STEP at the bottom. STEG stands for septic tank effluent gravity. So in that one, we have a house with a septic tank, and it has a gravity connection down to the main line, a 4-inch main line, which is running on the edge of the street. That's called a STEG system. And that, as I said, about 80% of the properties in Woodacre could be connected to this effluent sewer by that manner. And the lower one, where the house is below the elevation of the main line in the street, it would be a STEP system, septic tank effluent pump, where you have a septic tank. A pump actually goes in the second compartment of the septic tank, and then there's a small diameter piping with check valves, pumps up to the main sewer system. Next slide, please. Okay, now to go through the alternatives 3, 4, 5, and 6, I'll again point to the features here. We've got the boundaries of the service area. Blue would be the effluent sewer lines that we just talked about, and all of those would be gravity lines. There's a dash blue line where the arrow is now, that it would indicate a pressure line to pump back up back in a southerly direction on Redwood Drive, because of the slide that has occurred recently on Redwood. The other lines would all then drain down to lift stations, a sub lift station at the bottom of Redwood, and then a main lift station at the intersection of Railroad and San Geronimo Valley Drive. From that point, the effluent would be conveyed in a force main under the different alternatives to either the treatment location on the Dixon Ranch property or directly up to the leach field site on the Dixon Ridge site. Okay. Next slide, please. So I'm going to go through just briefly each of the four alternatives, 3, 4, 5, and 6. Primary treatment, effluent collection system, main lift station, as we pointed out, the force main to the leach. So it would go up San Geronimo Valley Drive, installed here by horizontal directional drilling. So there would be no trenching on that street, and it would be a fairly short construction period to install that. And then at the Dixon Ridge site, a 100% community leach field and 100% reserve area for the flows for that alternative. And as I indicated before, capacity for up to about 150 connections with primary treatment only. Next slide. So we go up a notch with alternative 4, and I've highlighted in red what the differences are. So we'll just talk about those. Instead of the force main going up to the leach field site, the effluent force main from the main lift station at Railroad and San Geronimo Valley Drive would go to the Dixon Ranch property. It's in one of the fields where they currently do most of their manure composting, horse manure composting and storage. And we've located and worked with the family there to identify a site and how that could be integrated into that site. From that point, after treatment, the water would be pumped under San Geronimo Creek and up the hill to the leach field site. All of the pipeline work that I've talked about would all be horizontal, directionally drilled installation. At the leach field site, the difference here with the compared to the community to alternative 3 would be just that it would require less leach field for the same capacity, or it could provide for greater capacity because of the additional treatment received at the treatment system. Okay, alternative 5, the differences here between alternative 4 and 5 is this would include the addition of disinfection following secondary treatment, but we'd envision the same secondary treatment process that would make the water suitable for surface irrigation and other approved secondary recycled water uses. It's not the uses for secondary water are not as extensive as for tertiary water, but it is suitable for pasture irrigation, open space irrigation, dust control. There's been some discussion with the Dixon Ranch about the use of the water for conditioning the manure in their composting operation. Okay, last alternative 6. So here the difference is we change from secondary treatment to tertiary treatment, which is really just adding an additional filtration, microfiltration process, disinfection, but it does also add additional redundancies, monitoring and testing, because tertiary treatment makes under the state water recycling standards, makes it available for use in areas where there's a higher risk of or opportunity for human contact. So that was the type of treatment that would have been used for golf course irrigation. It can be used for landscape irrigation in developed areas, and also for interior house toilet flushing if that were available. Okay, next slide. This is a aerial showing the location on the Dixon Ranch site where the proposed treatment plant would be sited, 100 feet minimum from the seasonal creek on the left, and from San Creek, which is below the treatment site. That's about 10,000 square foot area that's diagrammed there. The Dixon Ranch to the left, and you can see the location of the proposed leach field site is on the south side of San Geronimo Valley Drive and up the wooded hillside from where the treatment plant would be located. Next. This is a photograph of another small community treatment system using the same technology that would probably, but not necessarily, be the selected treatment technology for this. Small building. This serves a community of about 130 residences. Different in that it takes standard. There's no septic effluent sewer system. It's a standard gravity sewer. They have infiltration problems, a larger system, but this is what the treatment system would likely look like. Those structures you see there, they're almost about the size of a manure pile, but they have tops that hinge open. It's within that treatment system. There's a synthetic textile filter material. It's called an Advantex system. A lot of residential Advantex systems are in use in Marin County. This is a multifamily commercial scale Advantex system. The configuration they call is the AX Max, if you're familiar with that. Next slide. Okay, the Dixon Ridge leach field site, just briefly, site conditions we found back in 2010 were excellent, and we were quite interested in that site as a local option for the Woodacre Flats area. It's about 25 acres overall. The portion that is really suitable for wastewater disposal is about 4 acres, which probably not all of that would be part of the project. 10 to 35% slopes, good sandy soils over weathered sandstone. We were out there this year in the heart of the wet weather season in February. There is no groundwater observable to the depth of our exploration. Good percolation, setbacks. There are 2 ephemeral drainages that are on the site, and the carrying capacity would be based upon the trenches and the nitrogen loading. Okay, next. Few pictures. So the site has some good stands of redwood, madrone, bay, fir in some places, and some tan oak and coast oak. But there's also a lot of understory, small trees struggling, a lot of fallen trunk trees. And next slide. But you can see there are good stands of redwoods. The leach field development in this would be in the areas between trees. The clearing would be only those of trees of a smaller size, not any of the protected species. We've had an arborist at the site, Kent Julin, who many of you may know locally. And he had identified and provided a report for us on his assessment of the trees and recommendations on how to design around the trees, which were the most sensitive and provided setback recommendations. Also did note that in his opinion, the nutrients in water from the leach field system would benefit the tree health, and thinning the understory and the smaller trees would actually be also a benefit to the trees and through the reduction of wildfire hazards. Next. The way the leach field system would be designed, just briefly, shallow trenches We're not talking about deep trenches, but shallow trenches that would use leach field chamber. And I have a diagram of that to a graphic to show you after this slide. And pressure distribution. There'd be no pumps or electrical needed at the site. We'd use what's called an automatic dosing siphon, which is used in many other systems around Marin County, the Marshall system, Skywalker Ranch, French Ranch, and the Oceana Marin even. And it's technology that's more than 100 years old. Everything would be underground. It can be installed with a small excavator. The system would be suitable for year-round use or winter only if there were a summer irrigation program as part of the project. 100% installed, 100% reserve area. We expect something in the neighborhood of 3,000 to 5,000 lineal feet for the different alternatives. And I already mentioned the carrying capacity is what dictates what the maximum volume of wastewater and number of properties that could be served by a leach field in this area. Next. This is just a graphic of the leach field chambers. These can be, what this really does is allows you to develop the leach field without bringing in a lot of gravel and a lot of construction equipment. So its material can be hand placed and hauled to the site, and the piping would be inserted within that. There would be a small amount of gravel on the base of the trenches. Next slide. This is my last slide, and this is just to go over some of the community system project cost issues, and just so we can understand and everyone can get a feel for. We have not completed the detailed cost estimates for each of the alternatives, but the information here, I think, is a good point to bring forward. The capital costs. This includes the engineering, environmental permitting, and basic administration, basically, of the project. The construction, and I think the point here I've highlighted that. The community facilities actually include the homeowner septic tanks. And what this means is that when the project is developed, the septic systems, whether they're upgraded from what's on the property now, or whether it's a completely new installation, that would be a project cost paid for just the way the piping in the system and the treatment and the disposal systems. And this has been a practice in state funding going years back, because the septic tanks are providing a part of the treatment process. This is not the way, if you have a standard sewer system and you just run your pipe from the house to the sewer, that's a homeowner cost. Here, the septic tanks are vital to the overall treatment process provided by the system. And that's why they're included as a project cost shared by the overall financing of the project. So the capital costs are paid for by a combination of grants and then local property assessment. Will be a big effort, I think, to try and get grant funding. That's what has made other projects successful. The local property assessments, this is through an assessment process or an assessment district, the district being not a governing district, but a financing district. That requires 51% vote, and that will take place later in the process after environmental review and when other steps that already went through we've gotten to that point. The cost to the homeowners under an assessment district is spread out over typically 30 years and through the sale of bonds or acquiring low interest loans. The expected annual assessment based upon the numbers of property and the cost anticipated would probably be in the range of $1,500 to $2,000 per year. And that would be assessed on the tax bill, their annual tax bill. Operation and maintenance. So that covers all of the labor, equipment, utilities, supplies, and the operation of the wastewater system. And includes annual inspection of the septic tanks and or pump systems if they're on individual properties. The cost to the homeowners to support the ongoing operation and maintenance is also paid through an annual fee and issued on the tax bill. And that, based upon other similar facilities, is estimated to be in the range of $1,000 to $1,300 per year. It will depend upon the number of connections to the system. Because the more connections, the greater the spread of the cost, and a lot of the annual costs are fixed costs regardless of how many connections. So the cost will be lower the more people are connected to the system, and higher for the lower the number of connections. There are additional homeowner costs, and I'll point out what those are. First, if the property connecting has a septic system that can't be used in the system, has to be replaced, the homeowner is responsible for the abandonment of that septic tank, which includes a county permit. But the new replacement tank would be part of the project. Rerouting the house plumbing to the new tank location, if that occurs on a property, that's the homeowner cost. The pump, then ongoing, the pump out of the septic tank would be homeowner requirement, and that's the same process that is used now for individual septic systems. And the need for pumping would be guided by the inspection work by the operators for the overall system. And lastly, if one of this, if a system actually has a step system which requires a pump, the electrical costs that would come from that would be a homeowner cost. So I think that's my last slide. And hopefully I was within my time frame, more or less.
Sorry, I was talking to a muted mic there. Yeah, you're slightly over, but I think we're good. I think we can keep going. Really quickly, there's a question I think you already answered, Norm, but I just want to confirm it because we can tick that one off. It's a written one in the questions app here. The laterals installed, are they included in the project costs? So the laterals from the tank to the system?
Yes, that's
Okay.
included. Yes.
Okay, so that one got answered. Okay, so now we're going to go to, for those of you who may have just joined, just to really quickly check in on our process today. We just heard the update presentation. There was a request because of the questionnaire that went out to have a little bit of more detail on some of the project, the potential options. And so that's what Norm was doing. We're going to have some answers to some pre-submitted questions from the two regularly participating groups. That was done so Artie and Norm could get a heads up and integrate some answers into the presentation and just be more prepared. Then we'll go to community Q&A. We'll have a 1-minute limit. We have Julie here to do a little timer for us, and we'll get through everybody, hopefully everybody that wants to ask a question. If not, you can write it in the question option, the kind of internal Zoom app here. If we don't get to it tonight, Artie will follow up with everything that's asked and send out an email with answers to those questions. So that's just a review for everybody. Please stay within that minute or close to it, because I don't want to have to mute you. And as hands go up, I'll prompt folks and we'll get through. We understand that this may not be enough time for every question to be answered. That's why we have those other options. Plus, Artie's always available by phone and email, and you can reach out. Okay, with that, just for the folks who may have joined us late, we'll start with these questions. And the first set, I believe, is from the San Geronimo Valley Planning Group. And we'll start with question 1. On a recent site visit to the proposed Dixon Ridge leach field area, an environmental lawyer in attendance noted the forest appeared to have all the traits of spotted owl habitat. His recommendation was to determine if in fact the ridge was spotted owl habitat now before too much time and energy is spent in design. Will there be a study of this area? If so, when? I believe, Norm, you're the guy to answer this, right?
Yeah, yes, we assume that the habitat and the spotted owl could very well be present, and this would potentially impact the construction timing. This will be addressed. This is a standard study that would be addressed in the EIR, which and the design work would follow the EIR. So that's the appropriate time for this study to be done, and the findings would be followed, recommendations followed in the design and construction.
Okay, next question. Okay, with project alternatives 4 through 6 serving up to 300 plus homes, and with new state housing laws in effect, what impact could excess sewer capacity have on the building of second units, building on formerly unbuildable lots, or the building of multifamily units?
Okay, so this is another EIR question, and I think it's a very valid question to ask, and should be in responses to the notice of preparation when the EIR begins. We're not, as part of the feasibility study, looking at these questions. I did mention that we're not accounting for and or evaluating vacant parcels as properties that would be served by the project. But yes, growth-inducing effects of a project are a critical and a standard element of the environmental impact study.
Okay, next question. If there was interest in an even larger system, could project alternatives 4 through 6 be enlarged to handle the increased flow at Dixon Ranch?
Okay, so the use of the Dixon Ridge leach field area is limited, and so that limits how much additional capacity could be provided for a larger area if that were interested. So small groups of houses here or there on the edge of the service area that we've defined, probably yes, there's some wiggle room in the upper number, but whole new neighborhoods or other areas in the valley wouldn't be accommodated at the Dixon Ridge leach field area. And what's critical to the sizing of any wastewater system is, where does the wastewater go in the winter time? And that's the capacity of the leach field. We've looked at the carrying capacity and have our best estimates of what that limit is. So the answer is some additional capacity, but not a great amount.
Okay, next question. In May of 2017, in response to the notice of preparation for the abandoned golf course sewer option, the San Francisco Bay Regional Water Quality Control Board expressed concerns over wastewater systems in the rest of the valley that would not be served by that proposed option, stating, quote, "The EIR also needs to clearly describe what measures will be taken to address inadequate OTS, that's the on-site wastewater treatment systems, in the area that will not be served by the project," end quote. How will the current study and EIR address the issue of unserved homes in the area with inadequate OTS?
Yeah, hello all. Yeah, great Perry here. Yeah, I think for the answering the question, it might depend on the project description that we actually put in the future EIR. And that might depend on the option that we pick in terms of what type of system we're going to have. So there's still detail that come to answer the question to put into the EIR. And that might also depend on capacity, so it's a perfect EIR question. The other factor I could think of is that, the county is also finishing their approval of their local agency management plan, which also includes is how wastewater is handled throughout, the different valleys and what kind of systems, which ones are failing. So there may be also some direction in that document of how to deal with some of the underserved or properties that might be out of the area. So my take is that once this feasibility is done, get a more defined project description, and then that can lead into some of the water board questions into the EIR.
Okay, great. Thank you, Greg.
Could I add one thing to that? The regional water board staff has already been to the Woodacre area, has toured the Dixon Ranch properties, and they've been brought up to speed as we've been doing the study. So the current staff is well aware and informed on the project and the alternatives that we're looking at.
Okay. Next question. Will the survey go to only Woodacre residents or other Valley residents?
So the survey that was sent out, and this was sent out by Questa, that went to all of the residents in the service area. We've also about ready to put on the county's website a survey that doesn't get into quite the detail of the mail out survey that would be available for other residents in the surrounding communities. And RT will be, I think, providing some information on when that becomes available, but that should be fairly soon.
Okay, next question. What percentage of a return do we need to get on the survey to be a legitimate community outreach?
So I think the answer here is that the questionnaire survey it has many different objectives. One is really to just engage with the community and to inform them of what's going on, but also to get feedback on level of interest and what the concerns are, to help in a general sense going forward for the Board of Supervisors, funding agencies, regional water board, others who may be partners in funding or helping the projects the project move forward. So it's not there isn't a fixed limit of how many we have. I can say we've already received about 50 responses in the last 10 days or so since the survey went out. But those would be the purposes of that. So there's I think the kinds of returns we're getting as all is useful to the project.
And I would also like to add here is that we have extended the time to return those surveys back to norm by the end of June 30th. So it's very important. That's why we have arranged this meeting. It's in the sense that you are aware of all the technical terminology or anything. If you have any question about those surveys, please ask us, as we have extended the deadline. Thank you.
Right. Thanks for that update, Artie. Okay, so that's we're going on to question 7. If our old tanks are still in good shape, will we have to replace them?
So the answer is no, but each septic tank that is retained will be inspected, and the way we did it in the Marshall project and other projects like this, the tanks will probably require some waterproofing or some upgrade, even if they're in good shape before they're connected into the system. If they do have to be replaced, as I mentioned before, that would be a cost of the overall project. And we can't have tanks that leak groundwater into the collection system. So this is a really important step, but it will be covered in one of 2 ways.
Okay, next question. This is our last pre-submitted question. Is there a projected cost per year or per month once the community wastewater system is up and running? I think, Norm, you touched on that before. It's in the slides.
Yes, in my last slide, I talked about the annual operation and maintenance cost being somewhere in the range of $1,000 to $1,300 per year, depending upon the size of the service area, the number of people who are sharing those costs.
Okay, so that got through the pre-submitted. Now we'll go to the community. Again, if anybody joined late, if you could use the raise your hand feature, and I will prompt people in order. And Artie, if you could take it down from slides. stop sharing, I think it is. Great. And then Julie, our technical support, is gonna kind of manage things in here, put up a timer for a minute in case we have a lot of people. We want to make sure that everybody has a chance, or as many people as possible. If there's a lull, I'll go over and ask some of the questions that have been put in writing in the Q&A feature. If we don't get to all the written ones, like I said, Artie will follow up with an answer in an email. So our first person is Phil Sauter. You have the floor. Maybe restart. Can you restart the timer there?
Okay,
There
thank
you
you.
go, Phil. Thank
All
you.
right. I wanted to ask with regard to Spirit Rock, I think they have some regular events and about 100 rooms there for those events. Are there, is there any idea how much load they'd be taking on the system or putting on the system? And second of all, if that's significant, would there be an opportunity for them to host some of the infrastructure? Like I'm thinking the leach field on the Dixon Ridge is really covered with vegetation, and are there opportunities to put that leach field or some of the treatment facilities over on the more open ground at Spirit Rock?
Hey, Norm, I assume that's a you question.
Yeah.
You're investigating
Sure.
that stuff.
Sure. Yeah. So even we have explored the idea of extending service to Spirit Rock, kind of in exchange for Spirit Rock providing waste disposal, maybe irrigation capacity for the system, while they would still use their own leach field. But that at the present time, there's no concrete agreement or I think intention to bring Spirit Rock into the system. We've left that out there as a possibility, but the Spirit Rock, they do have their own leach field system, a 200% leach field, and it's pretty much all spoken for, and their property doesn't have good conditions to take the kind of wastewater flows that would for leach field disposal in the wintertime. Parts of their property could take recycled water, and that was the main interest in discussing that with them. But at the present time, there's nothing firm in that direction. Okay.
Okay, and since there's no one with a hand up, I'll go over to the written ones. I think people may be doing that, some people prefer that. Would pumping of septic tanks be more or less often than they are now? So in other words, would the pumping be less because you have a more efficient system?
I would say that the pumping of individual tanks would be less, and it would be less because a lot of pumping that goes on now is to allow the system to recover from high groundwater conditions. So they're pumped at a higher frequency in areas that have problems, or if they have failed leach fields or slow draining leach fields. So that's the pumping that would be done under a community project would be just the normal removal of solids from the tank, which may be 3 to 5 years. It may be 7 or 8 years for some people, depending upon how they use it. So the additional pumping that goes on now to compensate for the high water table conditions, that would be eliminated in the community system approach.
Okay, thank you, Norm. We'll go to Maya.
Yeah, so if this project is successful, is there any reason why we couldn't see this as the first step in the valley, and that other communities in the valley couldn't develop something comparable, so that San Geronimo could develop something with land there or forest knolls or whatever? So could this be considered an initial project in the valley? Maybe this is for Greg.
Yeah, I think, I think you're right. I think that's and let me kind of take it a step further. So one of the possibilities that occurred to us as we were going through this is that the project that has, you have to find a place for the winter leach field. I talked about that before. So any project that's kind of critical, is critical to anyone who, any kind of development valley. In the summertime, if the uses for recycled water could be identified or could emerge, it's possible that multiple, say a system in Woodacre, a similar system in San Geronimo or Forest Knolls or somewhere could handle their own winter leach field, secondary treatment, and perhaps there could be a central point where the secondary water was collected for a common tertiary, excuse me, tertiary facility that would make the water available for recycled uses. And that's one concept, how you could have separate this as a pilot or a example, others, but they might be joined at the tertiary level rather than bringing all the collection of the raw sewage together.
Okay, I think there's no one else, so I'll go over to our written. If we go with any of the alternatives, would we all have class 1 systems? So we upgrade everybody to a class 1 system.
Could you repeat that?
Yes. If we go with any of the alternatives, I'm assuming the wastewater treatment alternatives, would we all have class 1 systems? So would it upgrade all the systems?
So the community system would be considered a code or class 1 system, although it itself is not, the class 1 designation is for individual on-lot systems, at least in the county's policies and guidelines. So it would technically be up to code, though.
Okay, so now we have some hands up. We'll start with Renee Voss. Renee Voss, you have the floor.
Yeah, so the leach field proposal is highly dependent on whether the Dixons will actually allow the leach field there. And so it seems to me that the alternatives are putting a lot of eggs or in one basket. It doesn't look like alternatives to me. Are there any other places that actually could serve the leach field in case the Dixon Ranch decides they don't want the leach field there?
Okay, Norm?
Sure. So that was in 2010, that was the focus of the study, was to look in all areas around the Woodacre Flats and the Woodacre community in general to find potential properties where potential that had soil conditions, suitable conditions for wastewater disposal. And the Dixon Ranch hillside wooded property was the only site through that investigation that offered that possibility. The study in 2010, because of the identification of the golf course and the interest of the golf course in bringing the wastewater for water recycling in golf course irrigation, took the focus away from the leach field area. And so the current study is come back to look at what could be done on that site that was identified in 2010, and not to look at other sites which we had already canvassed the area back then. So that's why the focus is on that, because that was initially identified but not pursued to determine what its full capacity was. And that's what this study was done.
Just Renee, you're muted. We have another person in line. But I heard implicit in part of your question, Renee, was what is the confidence level that something could happen at Dixon Ranch, because that's not a foregone conclusion. Am I reading you
Well,
right?
no, what if it's not available? What do you do now?
Yeah.
What do you do then? You're muted.
Yeah, you're muted, Norm. So that was the other part of the question. So
Okay.
if Dixon falls through, where does that leave this feasibility in the project?
Yeah, that's critical to this study. And the study was authorized and scoped, and through discussions with the family there, the Dixon Ranch family, this was the prime opportunity for the community, the Woodacre Flats and adjacent community to find and implement a local solution. So,
In other words, are you saying that there would be no project? Are you saying that there would not be a project if that was not available?
Yeah, there's no intention to acquire the land by eminent domain, if that's the question. No.
Norm, yeah,
I'm talking about the feasibility of the project. Would the project no longer be feasible if that's not available?
I hear what he's saying, Norm. So if Dixon doesn't come through, if a deal cannot be negotiated with Dixon, is there no project? Does that make this project null?
Well, then there's the alternative two, the on-site wastewater management approach.
Okay, thank you. Okay, Renee, we got there. Sometimes it takes a minute. Okay, Susan, you have the floor. Susan. Salute, whoever just sneezed. Salute. Oh, okay, Susan, but it's not Susan. So, sir, you have the floor.
Oh, okay, got it. Sorry about that.
That's okay.
So in a
What should we call you?
boy named Sue.
Okay.
The previous slide that you presented this evening that showed where the drain lines for the effluent would be. It looked like some lots didn't have a line right in front of their house, and they'd have to go through the neighbor's property to get to that line. Is that accurate? Or can you put that graphic back up? In other words, it looked like there's a line that ran along Central Avenue, and then there wasn't any line that caught the properties behind it.
Norm, do you understand?
I don't have a copy of that graphic.
Yeah, Norm, do you understand the question, or do we need the graphic to reference?
Yeah, maybe we should look at a particular location.
So
Yeah.
Artie, can you put that up? Great, we'll go back to that, schematic. Yeah, there we go.
Okay, so can you see my mouse? Or no?
No, your mouse doesn't work.
So
on that.
anyway, right along what looks appear to be Central Avenue. Oops, it's gone. The
Yeah,
graphic.
she's putting it on presentation mode, so it'll be bigger. Can you, you missed the. So it's
Okay.
the far left one there.
Yeah, whose ever mouse
you
was there was on it just a minute ago. So
Yeah.
there's a line that looks like it runs up.
That's not, don't put play. Oh, I see. Presentation mode, there you go.
What's happening?
Okay, now presenter, sorry. If you,
So there's a line that looks like it runs up Central Avenue. And towards the end of where that line makes its turn, there's two lots there. And the lots behind the houses below don't have a line in front of them. So do those houses have to go through the property in front of, okay, whose mouse is that? That's what I'm talking about, right? Where that, just below where that mouse is.
that's already,
Inside
that's
the
your
red
mouse.
line. No, go up. Okay, now go up one more lot. Now move over to the opposite way, opposite direction. Okay, stop. Now right there. And according to the map, there's a house up there. Is that one parcel or is that two parcels?
You know, I can't say
Yeah.
that I know.
Well, I guess the question is, will anybody's line to the effluent, to the main line run through another person's property?
No, there'd be no intention for that, and especially with small diameter piping, it's relatively easy to make sure we get to every property. So no, there's no consideration of having easements between properties to run the sewer lines.
So then somebody who has an abandoned lot in that situation up above couldn't really join the system very easily. They have to run a whole new line to catch up with the existing line.
Well,
That would be part of the
okay.
project, right, Norm?
Yeah, to be part of this project.
No, I mean, the laterals are part of the construction project, right?
Yeah, well, in other words, there's a property up there that looks like it's a house that doesn't have access to the line. And if they wanted to join, how would they join?
I'll take a look at that.
Okay.
It wasn't the intent to leave any out, and
All right.
this
Okay.
this is not a
Okay.
this is not
So
a
the
design.
intent is that everyone would have a line in front of their house, that everyone who's included in this project would have a line in front of their house, and they wouldn't have to go through another person's property.
That's correct. Yeah.
Okay, okay.
Okay, thank you, we got there. All right, so I'll go to the next written one. Will installation of pipes from septic tanks to community effluent pipes require trenching, or would that use horizontal installation like under the streets? So would it be the same for the laterals?
So there may, in some cases, there may be directional drilling for the laterals. In general, they probably would be trenched, but if they're a longer distance, that would be, yeah, certainly that would be considered.
Okay. No one's got their hand up, so I'll go to the next written question. Do lots on Central Avenue require pumping to the community effluent pipes? If so, is the homeowner responsible for those costs? Could existing septic pumps be used for that?
So most likely existing pumps could be used for, this is, the question was about a connection on Central where a pump was required. Is that?
Yes, so
Which-
so where you have to pump from your property to the effluent pipes. Would the
Yeah.
homeowner be responsible for those costs? Or could existing septic pump be used for that? Seems like there's two components based on your previous slide. There's the maybe electricity costs. But the lateral cost would be covered by the project, is that correct?
Correct. So the lateral cost would be covered by the project. If the pump was determined to be suitable, it probably could be used. I think it'd be a case by case situation, but just try to work out the most sensible solution.
Okay.
Mhm.
I'll go to the next one since we don't, oh, we do have a hand. Back to Susan or Susanna, but it's not really Susanna. So, sir. The boy named Sue. Okay. And unmute. Boy
Okay.
named Sue.
So if the advanced treatment systems on Dixon Ranch, the sand filter are equivalent, and then the other two, are they going to be 100 feet from the creek? Is there enough setback for that?
Yes, there's all facilities will be more than 100 feet from the
So,
either.
so even
and-
that composting area for manure that the Dixon Ranch is using, that's 100 feet from the creek?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Most of it, there may be some that's closer, but the parts that I saw were 100 feet.
Okay.
Okay. So next written is who will monitor the system if it's built? Who would we call about malfunctions? So Norm, I assume that's you?
I can answer, but our team may want to weigh in because it would be similar to the Marshall system, where the county has a contract with a maintenance operations and maintenance company, and it's their staff that maintain the treatment system, do the monitoring, do the reporting on the system, and also do annual inspections of the septic tank pump units in the Marshall system, and something similar to that, I would imagine.
Okay. Next question, no one's got a hand up, is why not just build a sewage treatment plant and recycle the water to us for irrigation?
So with the alternatives that include wastewater treatment systems, those are the same as a sewage treatment system. The difference, though, is in the collection, and in that the conventional sewer was considered for the golf course alternative that was studied some years ago, with not as great a concern about infiltration, because the more water the golf course got, the better. When you have a leach field that has to operate within limits, and you're pumping to that leach field, it's really important that you exclude extraneous water, and that's the reason for the effluent sewer system. But it is the equivalent of a sewage treatment system, and alternatives do include the option of taking it to a secondary recycled or tertiary recycled water level for reuse.
Okay, so we have a couple of hands. Phil, you're up first, then we'll go to Elijah, but Phil, you have the floor.
Great, thank you. I remember about 8 years ago when the numbers were presented, I think they were about half of what they are today. And I'm assuming that's in inflation and just the years go by and things are more expensive. The one thing that I recall from the study 8 years ago is that no sewage treatment plant or program I've ever seen has looked at what are necessary upgrades, and none of them have factored that in at the beginning. And after 20 or 30 years, things start failing and it starts costing people money. Is there a plan to put that into this proposal and to see what the costs will be, 20 years down the road? Are the necessary upgrades budgeted in here?
Yeah, so in preparing the estimated costs and budgets for operation and maintenance, part of that is replacement, a factor for replacement of pumps. So mechanical equipment, and there are guidelines that are followed in terms of how many years before certain types of equipment require replacement. Tanks, may be 50 years for replacement, but pumps, electrical equipment, may be 10 to 15 years. So those are built into estimating the operation and maintenance costs. So part of the fees that are conducted on an annual basis are earmarked for reserve funds for equipment replacement in future years.
Okay. Elijah, you have the floor.
Yes, hi. Thank you all for putting on this meeting tonight. A couple of questions. What is the timeline to completion for the feasibility study? And if the project is deemed feasible, will the subsequent steps be worked on in sequence, or will there be done sort of concurrently to ensure, like, for example, you have the community support before going out to secure all the grant funding? Or is the project need to be fully funded prior to going to steps 3, 4, and 5? Thank you.
Sure. Okay, so the feasibility study, we pushed the completion of that back a little bit to make sure we can get the questionnaire survey information back and other input from these meetings. But we'll be finishing our report in July. And I expect in August, there'll be some review with the Regional Water Board, county, and perhaps some others. But by the end of summer, we'd have the completed feasibility study. Then going forward, yeah, lots of things can happen at the same time. And as an example, maybe it's a little off topic, but in the Marshall study, the EIR, the feasibility study, was about a year-long effort. The environmental study was about a year-long effort. And then the design, the assessment district, the formation happened all within a condensed time frame of about 4 to 6 months to get the project under construction before the grant deadline ran out. So, but to answer your question, the other items on that task are not, they aren't one at a time. A lot of it would be done concurrent.
Yeah, you have a follow-up, Elijah? We've got no one in
Yeah.
line. Go ahead.
So, are there grant opportunities that have been identified that you plan to pursue, or the community or county or?
So there are different state grant funding programs. The one that is that would be most helpful to the project would be if there is the water recycling funding program. But that would be not available for leach fields or for collection systems, but for the wastewater treatment and recycling facilities, which they fund to 100% of the cost. So to the extent that that becomes part of the preferred project, that would be one identified source of funding. There are other programs at the State Water Board, and those, they come and go, or they change from time to time what the eligibility requirements are. And there isn't one that's been specifically identified yet, but that's where the effort, I think, from the county has to be directed as soon as there's a sense of, the preferred project.
Yeah, and I will add to what Norm just mentioned is that there is Clean Water Revolving Fund that is a part of the State Water Board grant. And it's not a grant, it's under Prop 1, but it's a low interest loan on 30 year period that they can give.
Okay, we have a couple people with their hands up. Got a boy named Sue again, and then Sandy. Boy named Sue, you have the floor.
Boy named Sue here. Okay, so worst case scenario, something happens, the pipe ruptures, water sewage leaks into the creek, some kind of financial liability is incurred. What kind of liability will the members of this group, this Woodacre Flats group, carry? Will they be responsible for fines and penalties and repairs and fixings and what's the warranty on this system?
Right. So it would be the governing body, which would have to be formed to operate and maintain and own and assume all liability for the system. Likely that could either be a locally formed district, independent district, or come under the wing of the Board of Supervisors, which is probably the most likely approach. So that it wouldn't be a homeowner responsibility, it would be the Board of Supervisors.
What about financial liability?
So if there's a big disruption that goes beyond the reserve that's anticipated for heavy O&M.
Yeah, if there's a fine or
yeah,
some kind of, something like that, if we.
How would you get funds to pay for that? Something that's not anticipated in your current funding structure.
Yeah, so there isn't part of an operation and maintenance cost that pays for a future lawsuit. So and that's
So so there's no answer at this point. If there was some kind of major liability, then the members of the group would have to pick it up financially, and the board would absorb the legal liability.
Well, it's the Board of Supervisors, if that was the governing body for the district. So it would be the district, it's not individual homeowners that have that responsibility.
Okay, so there's no liability, but there may be financial, the board or the governing body may be faced with financial liabilities they could have to pass along to the homeowners, to the members of the community, the system.
Sure. So, yeah, I think that's probably a good question that we can take to the county council, county Board of Supervisors, and provided, a more complete answer than I've been able to give.
Okay, so last time, and this is my last comment, last time, 5-6 years ago, the comment from a representative was that the county, the way it was set up then, the county would assume legal liability, the members of the district would assume financial liability. So it sounds kind of like what you're saying, but you're saying that we need to wait and see how the thing is formed eventually.
Yeah, this is Greg with the county. And I think, you're
Yeah.
kind of on the right
Yeah.
questioning there. I think it would come back to whoever the entity is that, whether it's a service district or board of supervisors or a county department. But we could look at the other options or the other facilities that are similar and see how those are organized.
Okay.
But we can definitely get back to you on that part. Absolutely.
All right.
Thanks, Boysu.
Yeah.
And we're going to Sandy really quickly. I want to respectfully ask those of you in the chat to refrain from using profanity. Thank you. Sandy, you have the floor.
I have a question about the systems, the gravity systems. And are some people on gravity systems going to be able to, will their system function without having a pump, or do
Yes.
all systems, they will? But does that all depending on the location of where the lines are going to run? Because I'm basically behind Ken in a way, which is the Sue, the man named Sue. And so my house is above him, not directly behind him, but kitty corner behind him. So if the lines aren't, if my line doesn't run through property to get to Central Avenue, it would have to, I'm currently on a gravity system, but then I would have to have a pump to pump my effluent up to the road or to the pipe, because otherwise it's not going to get up there to go, down the road and around the corner into where it's supposed to go without going through someone's yard. So the way I'm understanding this is that I would have to switch to a pump to get it up to where it needs to go to run lateral to get down to, I don't know where it's going to go, down Scott Street or something, and then into a line on Central. So I wanted to see if I'm correct on that. The other thing is, part two of my question is, a lot of people have generators now and stuff, not everybody, but if there's a power outage where it's a long term, what's going to happen when a lot of people are on pumps to get their effluent out, and not everybody can get their tank pumped out. So that's my two questions regarding power outages and the pumps and getting things moving, and also, the gravity systems with people. Like I'm on a gravity system now, and it sounds like I won't be able to do that anymore. I will have to I'll be dependent on a pump, which also I'll be dependent on power to pump that up into the line. So those are my two questions on that.
Okay. Sandy, so what is your address? I'll look at it to see
It's
whether.
I'm on Taylor Avenue.
Okay.
And so
Okay.
I have some gravity, but enough that I'm on gravity now. So
Okay, regarding the pump, so just for point of comparison, the Marshall system, all of the properties on the Marshall system are on pumps. And what they have there is that they have emergency generator, a portable one that the maintenance district has trailered and would make use of that to power up any pumps in the system in an extended power outage. And I believe that happened once in the 16 or 18 years that they've been that system has been in use. But the same approach would be proposed for the Woodacre project. We think that, as I mentioned, maybe 20% of the houses may be in a position where they have to pump up to the sewer. The pump installation would all be paid for by the project. And then the inspection would be by the district operations personnel. And in a power outage, the operators, if it's extended, which it can be, they would service those to pump down the tanks individually.
Okay, so on a normal basis, the power would come from like my house, because that electricity would run the pump. And then if they have to take over, I don't know how that's connected, but they somehow are able to miraculously generate that power from portable source to do that.
Yeah, so the way that works is that the installation of a pump system would have its own control panel, and part of that panel would be a transfer switch to allow the power to be transferred from the house electrical to a portable plug-in generator, and that's in all of the systems in Marshall. So so that's a pretty effective way to do that. So that's built into the control panel for each pump.
Okay, and then I'm assuming, as far as my first question on the gravity systems, I don't know if you can check on that, but I think that on Taylor Avenue, if I'm not, looking at the map, but I'm pretty sure that the side of the street that I'm on, which I guess we'd call it the south end, the south side is part of the project area, and then the people across the street from us on the north side of Taylor would not be included in this study, I'm guessing. If they connected into a line, they would be using gravity, and then the people on the other side of the street, like myself, we'd have to probably pump up to it. So it'd be good to have that verified before, it'd be nice. It would be nice to know, but it kind of looks like it's obviously going to have to be that way. So thank you for your input on the power and so forth.
Okay, we've got one more person here. We're at the end of our time. I had checked that we're a few minutes after, but I know we didn't get through all the written questions, but like I said, Artie is already committed with her team to do that in writing, to follow up. All the questions that were submitted in the question function will be followed up with an email, but we'll give Maya the last question or comment. Maya, you have the floor.
Yeah, so just wanted to confirm that participating in this project is going to be voluntary, that no property owners are going to be forced to participate.
Yes, that's the assumption we're working under.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, that was clear and direct with a direct answer. Okay, so like I said, there will be follow-up. Artie, I know that somebody had asked, I want to get clarification. My understanding is that you will post the PowerPoints. You had referenced that Norm is the owner of his PowerPoint. Norm, are you comfortable with making your PowerPoint available on the website?
Yes.
Okay, so we'll post both of those PowerPoints. One has kind of the process with the pre-submitted questions. The other has Norm's detailed update. Those will be there. Also, the recording here. So if you have neighbors who missed and who want to know what went on, they can watch the whole thing. Artie will follow up with answers in an email to the questions that we didn't get to tonight. I want to thank everybody for showing up. Like I said, I do public participation, consulting, supporting, and facilitation, and it is always awesome to come to a meeting and see so much engagement and people really caring and participating. So thanks for everybody for taking time out of your evening to do that. Artie has already said there's going to be additional meetings and engagement going forward to be determined. You guys are on a list, you'll be notified. So with that, I wish you all a good night and thanks for showing up. Take care, everybody. Stay safe and well.
Great facilitation. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you. Thank you, sir.
Bye-bye.
Unmute.
Thank
Thanks to
you.
all of you who've participated.
Thanks so much. Thanks to
For all
Norm.
the attendance and for the county setting up the meeting. Thanks so much.
Thank you. Thank you, Rich.
Leave Clark's on there.
Oh, good. Oh, let me mute myself.